All right, so let's just get into it. No introductions or no formal introductions. You're Dr. Sugger, Dr. Sugger, Dr. Coleman. Monkeypox, get
Yeah,
it?
we have in the past done the COVID special, the COVID 2 special, COVID vaccine special, and here we are now until we have a new name for monkeypox, the monkeypox special. So I think what we're hoping to do today is a quick and dirty rundown of what you need to know, really.
I like monkeypox,
You
the
know
name.
what? As you know, viruses, any kind of infectious diseases should not be named after who discovered it, should not be given stigma. And really, it's inaccurate because people assume it comes from monkeys. So let's start from there.
So are the monkeys offended? Are they
They are
protesting? Is
protesting in
that
the
the problem?
streets. There's a Me Too movement, I think, going on as we speak. The natural habitat for this virus, we call the host, is actually the African rodent. The reason they call it monkeypox, it was discovered actually in the 1970s in a primate lab in Scandinavia. So actually, that's a misnomer for monkeypox to begin with. And then there's stigma that somehow it's related to just Africa. It is affects a certain amount of types of people, certain geographic region. Same reason, we don't call it the Wuhan virus, right? We call it SARS-CoV-2. So it's true that monkeypox has been around for a long time. First described in the 1970s. I don't know if you knew that. And it is
I
it
didn't.
is
In the
two different
Congo.
distinct what we call clades, CLADES. There's Central African, what we think about Democratic Republic of Congo, and West African or Nigerian clade. So what we're seeing since May of 2022, unprecedented spread throughout the world in areas where it not has been endemic in the past, first described in the UK, is very similar to the West African or what we call clade 3. So that's the first thing to know. And it's an orthopox. And why is that important? Because essentially it's the same family of viruses as smallpox. So smallpox, monkeypox, same family, called orthopox. You remember that King Philip came over for good seafood? Kingdom, phylum,
No.
genus, species came over.
Oh wow, you're
Yeah,
taking it back to
order,
biology.
class, genus, species. So anyway, that's a little mnemonic. So family
You
orthopox.
figure? Can I ask a
Please do.
question? You figure with all the restrictions and 6 foot distances, especially something like monkeypox, with it being contact, you wouldn't see a breakout, or am I wrong?
A couple things. So people are going to naturally compare monkeypox to coronavirus or SARS-CoV-2. Both of those viruses, as you know, are the only ones by WHO, public health of international concern. And of course, the CDC, beginning of August, labeled as a public health emergency in the United States. But what does it really mean? Well, if you look at the number of people someone with COVID-19 can infect, it can be upwards of 10 to 15 people, what we call the N naught. Monkeypox is much less, and the good news is much less infectious. The average person is infecting less than one person. So there's some distinct differences. This is not a virus that is brand new or novel. It's been around. We do have vaccines and we do have antivirals. So this is not a novel virus. What's unique about this is that it's a virus that has been around for a while, that has now spread outside of the Central and West African basin to now Europe and taken a foothold throughout the United States. That's the first and foremost. And that's not to say we haven't had cases of monkeypox outside of Africa in the past. But every case up until May can be directly correlated to either travel from Central West Africa or exposure to an animal. Maybe an animal came over from, as a pet. It came over to the United States, North America, and then exposure. So this is really the first time we're seeing transmission independent of travel or any kind of contact from Central and West Africa. You understand? So that's what's unique about it. But unlike COVID-19, it's been around for a while. We do have virus, and we'll get into it. We do have antivirals. We do have vaccines. Uh,
But why such a spread now, especially if it's not
so
as transmissible as
that is a
coronavirus?
great question, and that's why it's important to understand that there is related to smallpox. So both the same family. You remember small? Have you got your smallpox vaccine, by the way?
Smallpox?
No,
No.
that's because we stopped vaccinating people in 1972, and that's the only infectious disease, only zoonosis,
You probably
which is
did
I
then.
had to not, by the way. I missed it by a couple of years. That deemed eradicated in the world by 1980. So we're trying the same with polio. Have been unsuccessful thus far. We still see cases in Afghanistan, Pakistan, Yemen, even in Israel, that we see cases, and now we know about vaccine-derived cases, even in our back neck of the woods in Rockland, Orange County.
New York,
TB,
yeah.
right, still yet to be eradicated, but smallpox was eradicated. So the thought is that we're waning immunity against smallpox. The monkeypox, which again is a distinct virus but similar family, orthopox family, that people were more susceptible. So there was this perfect storm of the possibility of this virus to take foothold in susceptible populations. Because having smallpox or having majority of the world vaccinated against smallpox did protect against monkeypox, because again, same family. Now you're having people since 1972 in the United States and since 1980 worldwide who've never been vaccinated against smallpox. They no longer exist. Well, now you have a virus that's very similar to smallpox, again monkeypox, that can now take hold, and that's kind of the issue. And that, if you understand, I hope that's not too confusing. That is how this whole monkeypox, at least theorized, has been able to take hold. You have now a more susceptible population, where before you had a vast majority of the population that was vaccinated against smallpox. So, of course.
Can you go over how it's
All right,
transmitted?
so I think we have to get
Because
into.
I think technically, I don't know, would you call it a STD since
Well,
that
this is
seems
where
to
we
be
have
the
to get
bulk of the
into what
transmission?
is could be a slightly uncomfortable conversation. What we've seen since
For who?
early May, and that's continuing still at this point, as of August 16, 2022, it is predominantly a entity, clinical entity we're seeing in the MSM, men who have sex with men population. And of course, we have to tread very carefully as healthcare providers in the infectious disease world and the public health world, because at the same time, you need to target the population that most at risk, at least as of now, while at the same time
Right.
not stigmatizing a certain group. You know, it's reminiscent of probably how HIV played out early on, when it was predominantly described in the men who have sex with men population. Even if the stigma or the prejudice against that hopefully largely has been removed, there's still an idea that, you know, if you target that population in terms of prevention, etc., are you unfairly stigmatizing them? But at the same time, you have to do, you know, if something is affecting a certain population, it makes the most sense to intervene in that population and not aim for other populations where the incidence is much less. That's not having. So what we've seen, for whatever reason, is taken hold in that particular population and spreading very efficiently, and we'll talk about how, oftentimes mimicking a STI, or sexually transmitted infection. That's not to say it can't spread in the heterosexual population or other vulnerable
Right.
populations, but for now, as of this August 16th, 2022, the vast majority of cases have been the MSM population. And that's what makes this a little bit confusing. It is presenting as an STI. If you look at smallpox, you ever seen those smallpox pictures with you know, young child or an adult has lesions all over the body? I mean, if you look at this,
Yep.
you're thinking, hey, this person is probably not getting intimate with anyone. What's interesting about monkeypox, the way it's presenting now, currently, lesions are oftentimes kind of hidden, instead of on the face and the body in areas that may preclude someone from getting intimate with somebody. It's in the genital region and the anus, so people might not even know it's there. They might have some just, you know.
Do you have any? You're the taco meat
Oh,
man.
thank you for that
Legions?
interlude. That was a little comedic interlude in a very serious conversation.
I think I see a
Yeah,
monkeypox
yeah, I
in there.
appreciate
Yeah.
that. So oftentimes we see people. There's really a triad, right? We have fever, lymphadenopathy, which
Yep.
for those of you listening don't know what that is. That it just means large lymph nodes, and pox lesions. And pox lesions can start off as little red papules, then they become raised. We call them macules, and then they can start getting
Not
puffy, and then they
not
cross over.
PAC like not PAC like Tupac.
Not Tupac. Yeah,
POX.
that's
Okay.
that's right.
Okay. Sorry.
Although if you think about California loving all that kind of stuff, you know, it's the same. It's the same
Ah.
idea. Yeah, yeah, you like that. Uh, so
Ever,
it is spreading through extreme close contact. Now, could it be aerosolized and inhaled and become airborne or droplet? Yes, but that the majority driver at this time is prolonged intimate contact. But that can also be
okay.
household. So someone could have lesions and someone could share bedding with them, could share towels, other household items, and also get it that way. So you get the idea that it has to be prolonged, somewhat intimate. Again, intimate, vast majority have been presenting as STIs. We have seen people, in particular, certain situations, whether it's bathhouses, cinemas, group
Right.
sex, quite frankly. I mean, this is just, if you look at what the CDC risks labels as those at risk, it is not just MSM, but MSM who perhaps participate in certain activities, bathhouses, group sex, etc. Because the idea is that you have prolonged contact at least initially, this is where it was taking foothold. Again, I want to reiterate, over and over again, that this by no means this is not going to spread efficiently in other groups. But their idea was initially early on in young men, this was a way to intervene. That's maybe a discussion for a different day, but someone may say the CDC, WHO was a little bit behind the times and dropped the 8 ball and could have intervened earlier, could have made vaccines available earlier, could have had better, more direct messaging, right? It's kind of like, forget about treading lightly. We just need to be direct. If you are a young
Right.
MSM and you're participating in these high-risk activities, you need to understand this is going on. Um,
Right. Or if you're a swinger,
Look, the reality is there's no
that type of
judgment
thing.
here. As physicians, we have to just target the populations where this is spreading because we know once it gets entrenched in a certain population, it's naive to think it's not going to, it's naive
Right.
in the 80s when people said, well, HIV is a gay man's disease, right? We knew that. But maybe we didn't know that or we knew that, but people still said it. And so hopefully we've learned from that and realized we have to intervene no matter where we are. Because this virus will take hold, and certainly if you're a betting man, you can assume that it will eventually find its way into other populations. Now, the good news is that the fatality rate is exceedingly low. It's what we call self-limited illness.
Okay.
If you look at Central African or the Democratic Republic of Congo, has a higher case fatality rate, 8 to 11%. The Nigerian strain about 1 to 3%. What we're seeing currently is much lower than that. In fact, up until a few weeks ago, there's like maybe 6 deaths out of all the cases in the United States. They were all within Africa, sub-Saharan Africa. After that, about a week or two ago, there were a few cases of deaths described in Spain. And my understanding is those details of those cases were such that they were immunocompromised. They may have been advanced HIV or AIDS patients. So for the vast majority of people, especially young people who are getting it right now, it's uncomfortable, it's painful. There could be some stigma, unfortunately, associated with it, but it is a self-limited illness. However, the idea is that if you get more vulnerable people, that those who are pregnant, children especially, may be much more vulnerable to severe outcomes. And I should say that, people do die, especially of the Central African clade. There have been reports of lesions around the eyes causing blindness. So by no means should this be viewed as something that's benign, no big deal. But I think there is good news in that it is case fatality rates exceedingly low, and for the vast majority of people, it's self-limited. But you don't want to take those facts and have people say, well, then it's no big deal. That's not the case either.
Are there treatments available? Yeah. Or I saw some information about
Right. So a
vaccines.
couple things. There are 2 vaccines, Jynneos being one of them, another one being specifically for smallpox. The Jynneos vaccine was designed for smallpox specifically, much easier take than the original smallpox vaccine that's really not available at all. That's available really as the U.S. Department strategic stockpile. The Jynneos vaccine was designed for smallpox, but now that we've understand that smallpox and monkeypox are in the same family, it's about 85% effective against monkeypox as well. And that's what's being looked at for both vaccination for those at high risk. So again, the population we discussed about, including healthcare workers, specifically healthcare workers that may work at STI clinics, may work, let's say, in community clinics, or maybe particularly take care of certain populations that put them at risk. And then you can use this also as prophylaxis. Someone may have been exposed to someone monkeypox. Because there's a long incubation period, you can utilize vaccines as not only as prophylaxis from the get-go, but prophylaxis if you've been exposed, right? So usually we don't use vaccines in that way.
Oh, so for example, if you went to a party and it got crazy, wild, swingers, you invited your swinger friends,
I mean, but listen,
you could you could take a vaccine
there.
for monkeypox to prevent.
When you look at what is deemed high, I mean, it's very clear on the CDC website. So if you fall within a certain, if you've been obviously if you've been exposed to someone who definitively has monkeypox, or who is under suspicion for monkeypox, you can consider getting vaccinated. But if you have participated in high risk behaviors and you come from what is deemed now as of 8/16/2022, a high risk group, then yes, you should be
Got
considered.
it.
Now, as you know, the rollout has been not 100% without hiccups. It has been somewhat uneven. The United States now has taken over from Spain as the largest number of cases in the world, and yes, New York City, the largest amount of cases in the United States. So, parts of the village, parts of the city that perhaps have populations more higher risk, certainly a few weeks ago, were very visibly upset, and we're just saying, look, we cannot get enough doses for the amount of demand. So at least the awareness is out there, given the public outreach, that people are aware that they may be at risk, but the vaccine rollout has still been less than desirable. There is an antiviral also called TPOX. Um, that has not been utilized all that much as of now. The reason being it's not readily available. And again, for the vast majority of people, it is self-limiting. But that is because it's spreading not only in the MSM population, but the younger immunocompetent MSM population. If you start spreading to other more vulnerable areas of both that population as well as other groups, that conversation may change. So
So who would be eligible for the vaccine besides high
So that
risk
keeps changing, right? Right
behavior?
now, the demands far out is greater than and
Pace?
outstrips the supply. So it really comes down to certain populations, especially in the LGBTQ population, who may be engaging in group sex or other riskier type behaviors. Um, as a physician, maybe we may not be able to say that group sex in of itself is a risky behavior, but it is for the purposes of acquiring monkeypox. So there are some people who that's their lifestyle, and that is something that has to have. You have to have a conversation with the patient. If they tell you this, then you have to tell them, look, consider alternate expressions while this pandemic or while this now spread throughout the world is continuing until we have a better handle on both who can get a vaccine, who gets it, and our understanding increases, or you target that population specifically to be vaccinated. So again, and then of course you would vaccinate anyone who was a close contact. If someone had it in the
Right.
house and you're sharing bedding, you're not intimate with them, but you're sharing bedding. It has been described to be very efficiently transmitted through sharing bedding, clothing, towels, blankets, sheets, other household items. And there have been reports of children, and it's not for the godforsaken reasons that you think that, probably from household transmission, not from, unwanted sexual behavior. And children, certainly children, pregnant women, much more risk. And I will tell you, as the fall approaches, as kids go back to school, there is a thought that it could spread among children, especially the
Mm,
preschool children, right? They're in close contact. They may not
right.
always have the best hygiene. So that's something we really have to watch and be aware of. And so we have to, reiterate that this is not a disease that belongs to just one demographic, that has the potential to spread throughout our population. So we owe it to all of us to be aware and to be constantly vigilant of how this plays out.
So I guess the jury is not out yet.
Jury's
So
not out there, but again,
I was
just to
under the
reiterate, this is
impression that this was,
unlike
yeah,
SARS-CoV-2, the virus that caused the COVID-19. This virus has been
good,
around for a while.
good.
We have vaccines, we have antivirals. But of course, the question that I know you're asking back there is, why does this keep happening? We had SARS-CoV-2, now we have monkeypox until they change it to a different viral name. And so that's where I'll get on my soapbox.
The ID docs keep dropping the ball,
Well,
man.
no, it really has to do with,
You
with,
don't see
with
new kidney
humans
diseases, right? When's
encroaching
the last time it,
upon animals. These are viruses that really were just transmitting through different animals, right? Whether it's primates,
only ID,
or
man.
you have
You don't,
reservoirs where it would reside but not cause disease. So as you have animals and humans now encroaching on each other, you have a much more fruitful environment for viruses to zoonosis jump from interspecies. And of course, since these are viruses that are really, the humans have very little, if any, natural immunity, it's not surprising they can spread very efficiently. I will finally say that unlike SARS-CoV-2, which is an RNA viruses by nature make a lot of errors as they reproduce, and a lot of those errors are nonsensical, but sometimes those errors get together and can cause significant evolutionary advantages. That's why we see alpha, beta, delta, omicron, and certain subvariants of concern and interest. A monkeypox is a DNA virus. They're much less likely during the process of transcription and translation. You remember those from biochemistry? Transcription,
yes, I
messenger
do.
RNA, messenger RNA to protein translation to make errors. So the thought process is that the chance of this mutating is much, much less than RNA viruses like SARS-CoV-2, like HIV, which by definition are more prone for making errors as they reproduce.
Got it. All right. So what's the new name going to be?
You know what? That is a good question. I don't know. I don't know. Um,
The virus formerly known
I
as
think something
monkeypox.
with a pox, because pox implies lesions. Uh,
Yeah.
like I said, the
Big
likely
pox.
reservoir is the African rodent. So really, monkeys have nothing to do with it. It was discovered in a monkey lab in the 1970s, and I believe I think actually I'm not even sure, one of the Scottish, Nordic countries, maybe a Danish lab. But in any case,
Right.
you
Two
know,
pox.
I think it's important for all of us to
Too
know that we
soon.
never want to have any virus that somehow stigmatizes people or a region. Um, Even if you look at the Ebola virus, Ebola was named after the Ebola forest in Central Africa. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's kind of how these things change. But in terms of the name, maybe we can run a contest here and think about names. But I imagine names should be both descriptive in terms of the characteristics of something pox, but perhaps something more phylogenetic, in terms of its origins from the orthopox family of viruses.
All right. I like two
I
pox.
like two. I mean, honestly, if we could have,
Two
I think
pox
we
and the
should name this
outlaws.
episode Tupacs. If nothing else, because to lighten up, as I treaded my wording very carefully. Um,
You did a
I
good job.
appreciate that.
You didn't do a good job of that handle behind you, which is crooked. So I'm just critiquing your kitchen. Can you
Is
see
it
that?
crooked?
Yeah, that's very
Which
crooked.
handle on the up?
And who has letters in their kitchen that spell out home? I mean, what else is
Well,
it
if you
supposed to
must
say?
know, my
Is
wife
this
is
your
a big.
is this your
If
grandmother's
you
kitchen?
must know, my wife is a big Scrabble fan. So if you look at it closely, those are Scrabble
Oh,
letters. Right next to my very, I'm gonna move right here. What's that? My
teapot.
special teacup over there.
Mm, all right, I'll let you get back to your old
I
English
was actually
kitchen.
gonna make some. I think Earl of Bergamot. Earl Grey tea, if you're interested.
That sounds gross.
I think I
I'll
just want to
pass.
remind our viewers out there: you never add milk to Earl Grey tea because of the Earl of Bergamot. The oil and the tea will congeal with the milk, and it's really terrible. So I see people making this mistake all the time. You add lemon. That's the only time. I'm Indian. We add milk to all our tea, but if you're gonna drink Earl Grey, you add lemon, and please forego the milk. Thank you very much.
All right. Can you add Hennessy to your tea too?
Well,
What's
the
that?
bar is over here. I mean, we have to shift it over. The bar is that way. So, and I believe there's
Oh,
a nice bottle of rum nice bottle of tequila that a friend of mine, when he first visited my house, brought. So,
that tequila's like 3 years old.
I'm still waiting for you to come over.
All
I'm
right, the
still waiting for you to
statute of
come over, and
limitations is gone.
since you brought it over, I'm still waiting for you to come over, and we'll make margaritas or something.
All right. Well, hopefully we won't have to do a monkeypox part two.
But at least next time we should have an update in terms of the new name. Until next time,
Awesome.
rate, subscribe, listen. We will always try to keep you informed what's happening in the ID world, the nephrology world, and everything in between. Until next time, be well.